All right, everyone, welcome back to the Taillight Podcast. Today I have a really good guest on here, Michael Deaton. We're gonna be talking about how he went from here to there, and that starts from when him and his wife were spending years in corporate America. And I've mentioned many times before to many people, a single source income, and everybody can have that single source income. And the one day, all of a sudden, that was just gone from them. Same day, not like a week apart, same day, right? And it was just totally gone. And then they decided to get involved in vacant land. As many of you know, I am an investor. I never get vacant land. They're not making it anymore, but I never would have thought vacant land was the gig to be using. And I'm super curious about this, of how you could do that. And most importantly, I want to talk about something else that many entrepreneurs don't talk about, but it's so important because I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in this. That people, when you lose money, and we're going to go into this a little bit because they said they lost $250,000, right, Michael? That you lost $250,000. I've lost money too. That's not the end all be all. That is it's money, but there's an education behind it, right? And another thing, everybody talks about ROI. And when Michael called me, I happened to be up fishing. This couldn't have been more timely. He calls it return on time. I never thought of this. Think about this. I've never thought of this because I just packed up 2 days before just to go up for a 2-day trip to go fishing. And Michael calls me, "Hey, I'd like to be on your podcast. You wouldn't believe what I'm doing. You call it return on time." Okay, this is awesome. We're connected already. I like this guy. So welcome to the Taillight Podcast. Thank you very much for being here. And we're first things first. Where are you based out of? First of all, let's because I'm in Michigan and you're in where?
Yeah, my wife and I live in the mountains of Colorado. We have a little hideaway up here in our little slice of heaven.
Nice. Have you always you guys always lived in Colorado?
No, I was born in Dallas, Fort Worth. I was born in Fort Worth and lived there in Texas pretty much my whole life. And at this moment that we talked about, our transformational moment, we also picked up and moved to Colorado.
Okay, that is a good segue. You know where I'm going with this. That day, take me back to that day. Take our listeners back to that day. Some people
Yeah,
would call that a tragedy. It's a Shakespearean moment because it's a turn of events. Single source income. I've talked about this many times with people. You have a single source income coming in. You guys have a double source coming. Your wife has a job. You have a job. I don't know what happened, but you both lose it on the same day. So what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, it is Shakespearean tragedy of sorts. So I spent decades working in corporate America, climbing the ladder. I gave many layoffs in my career, thousands of people. And I was in operations and supply chain, mostly working for big tech companies. And my number came up for various reasons. It just happens. It was not a total surprise for me. Like, I had a good relationship with my boss. I knew that things were happening. I had even let it be known if my name came up, I would not be totally disappointed. I was working in Dallas Fort Worth. I was working for Microsoft at the time, based in Washington. I didn't want to move to Washington. That was the only upward mobility I had. My job in operations was really to outsource as much as I could. And so I had done that and I kind of worked myself out of a job. But yeah, when it happens, it's a gut punch. Like, I mean, even I knew it was coming. I didn't start preparing other than thinking I'd get another job somewhere. I started talking to connections, reaching out to recruiters. I had interviews. I interviewed with Apple and Tesla, Amazon. There were jobs out there to be had. They were going to require relocating to California or Ohio or somewhere else. And I wasn't really thrilled with the idea. Anyway, it happened. It was a Zoom call, early morning meeting. My boss, HR, thanks. We no longer need your services. Your ears get flooded with, you don't even hear the rest of the monologue as it happens. How am I gonna, explain all this? Whatever. Well, Lygia comes home from her job. She was working at a healthcare company,
Not the same
and
job. I didn't mean to interrupt. Not the same company, right?
yeah, totally different
Okay.
company. And she comes back. There was a company announcement. They're closing down the office, moving, consolidating. They were based in Fort Smith, Arkansas. They're going to get rid of this satellite office. Kind of same thing. And it was like, shit. We're like, like you said, that was our income source. We thought, okay, two incomes. Thankfully, we were in pretty good shape. Like, we had money in the bank. I got a severance, a really nice severance. I had worked a lot of seniority. And so, we had the runway to take the time to make the decision, but it doesn't feel like that in the moment. I mean, it's kind of a panic moment. Like I said, I was working different opportunities, but just feeling sick about it. I mean, I was like, okay, Tesla, Elon Musk. I heard horror stories of his executive level. People were leaving. The company culture was just grind, grind, grind. Amazon, Apple, not too dissimilar. I mean, these are US based corporate culture companies. It's what have you done for me lately? I was already traveling about 50% of a month because I managed an international team. And so I was all over the place, and we just didn't have a great quality of life from my perspective because I was gone most of the time. And so, thankfully, my wife super supportive. My wife's Romanian. She grew up under a communist dictator. Her mindset in terms of worldview is not totally, but very different in terms of risk, things that you have. And so she was very open to the idea of trying something different. And so we paused and started thinking about what could life look like? What would our perfect we did some exercises. What would our perfect day be? What is 10 years from now? What do we want? We met in the workplace. And so we had worked together for 3, 4 years. We carpooled to work together. We had lunch and all that stuff. And so we really enjoyed spending time together. And that's how we envisioned our future. Well, none of that really was down a corporate path. Again, that was more entrepreneurial in nature. And so, yeah, all of that would just swirled around in this tragic moment, but it really was a moment, a defining moment. So the door opened and we chose a certain path. At the same time, we have older kids. We were just about to empty nest. My level of risk tolerance really reduced because, or increased, however you want to look at it,
Mhm.
because I wasn't, my girls were, their college was all paid for. I didn't have four mouths to feed, just two. My wife's really supportive and says, hey, let's do it. Let's go for it. And so several factors kind of lined up that allowed us to pursue land. And we can get into how that happened. But the moment itself was just fraught with all of the things that you would expect. We just happened to take that pause to reflect and really think forward instead of just reacting like I'd done really since I was 20, just
Yep.
get a job, opportunity opens up over here, sure, I'll take it. I'll take the 2% raise on the annual, all those kind of things. But yeah, it really, I mean, looking back, obviously, it was probably the best thing that could have happened. My personality is one that doesn't really build something in parallel. And
Right.
so it really took me totally pivoting because I was pretty loyal as a company man. I'm working 16 hours a day, 7 days if it takes it, and just really not. I would have felt guilty if I was building something on the side and doing my own thing. It was kind of a just my personality.
Right. So you touched on a few things I want to point out here, or at least and get your comments, of course. I have hosted a few other real estate seminars, and if couples come in, there's one that's on board, the entrepreneur, doesn't matter, male, female, husband, wife, I don't care how you do it. If there's two of them, there's one that's going to be pulling the reins back. We had one lady get up when I started talking and left the room. And I see what here is that your wife is going, okay, go, go, go. And maybe if I got her, what do you think she would say? Do you think that, oh, my husband Mike would have pulled the reins back and he wouldn't have, he's pulling the reins and I'm pushing forward? Because there's always two. There's between the two. I've very rarely met a couple that said, let's do it. There's one that's like, I'm all in. The other one's like, no, you aren't. I don't care who you are. So there's that you guys were discussing. Now, I'm assuming HR typically does the firing on a Friday. Was this a Friday, if you remember?
I don't think it was. It was more midweek. This was like a Tuesday, Wednesday type situation.
Usually HR comes in on Friday. At least in
Yeah,
my job and a lot of other ones,
yeah,
they
yeah.
come in Friday by 2 o'clock and say thank you, but don't bother showing. Take the 3 hours to clean your desk out and go home. Then you have this time to think about it. So I want to go back to, like, you guys were, when you got both laid off that day. There is still a sense of security, and I did hear that from you. Of course, it's covered up now because you've done successful. But if you could deep dive back into when there wasn't security. The blanket had just been pulled off of you. Here you are now with everything you got going on, all your dreams and everything else is kind of like now being shaken. And so let's go to job security. What did that mean? And then segue into if you'd never been laid off, do you still think you'd be working there today? Today. So one for
Yeah,
job security, and then if you didn't get laid off, would you be there today?
job security is a really interesting topic. It certainly, definitely, totally reframed my view of job security. Like I said, I'd given many, many layoffs. I had dodged many layoffs with some foresight. Like I always pegged myself as somebody that had the bigger picture vision. I liked to work on bigger picture things. And so, for instance, when I started, I worked for Nokia mobile phones for a period of time. We had a factory in Fort Worth. We did a lot of the assembly. We did full manufacturing for a while. And then NAFTA trade agreement with Mexico came and we offshored some of the manufacturing. We kind of split it where Mexico was doing a portion, they would ship it to the US, we'd do another portion. And I could see the writing on the wall. And so I started looking for more global jobs and different things that I felt that I would be secure in. And so, I always had this view that that was the path. I had my skill sets. Like you mentioned, I could get another job if I needed to, which is not always the case, right? Market conditions depending. But my view of job security was that it was a paycheck, it was high performance, do your best, work the politics of the company, take the benefits, feed the 401k, retire at some point in the future. Yeah, and that moment for me wasn't really the total shake, but it shook. Like I said, my initial reaction was to go back and get another job, become, an executive somewhere else and probably even make more money because, you end up getting jobs that make more money when you shift companies. But after working in our job, in our, starting our business and growing it, and it's not without its own ups and downs. And I mean, sleepless nights and worry about income. And you have to work things in a little different way to build a bit more security in a business. But looking back, I mean, I have so much more security now. I am in not total control, but a lot more control of how much money I make. I make a lot more money than I could have maybe as, a board member or maybe not the CEO, but definitely the executive levels. And I control that. And it's something that I can do. And so, yeah, it's totally flipped my worldview. To your point about would I still be working in some company? I think so. I mean, I definitely think that that was my, from my dad was an entrepreneur. And I just never saw it that way. My mom was a school teacher, and I had the rich dad, poor dad kind of in my family. And I just went down I was going to be a doctor. I was going to make a lot of income, and then that didn't work out, and I just kind of drifted into company. And I don't want to knock myself too much because this was the '90s, and today it's so easy to start a business. You can start a service business, you
Right.
can throw up a website, you can market really for free, all the stuff. Back then it was more brick and mortar. There weren't so many. I mean, you could be a consultant probably and do some things, but it just wasn't as accessible as it is these days. But yeah, like I said, I kind of needed the push and even then I needed a little secondary push to tune in and listen to what I wanted out of life and to design my life rather than to just continue, stepping down the easy or available path
Right.
in that way. And it's, you never know. I'm not a person who has regrets. I don't look at life that way.
Right.
I think everything leads me to the point that I am today. But yeah, it certainly could be a totally different life
I like
had
how you
I
say
had
you
we
needed a
not.
little push. You didn't get a push. You got shoved off the cliff.
I
I mean, let's
got
be
the
honest.
floor
That's
pulled
not
out
really
from
a
under me.
push.
Yeah.
But there's some people out there right now that are going to be listening to this, whether it's they listen to a year from now or wherever it comes across their feed. And they don't necessarily love their jobs. They're tired of the hamster wheel. They're tired of going to the job. Yeah, that stands for just over broke. I think I stole it from Kiyosaki because I believe it is. They give you pay enough just to come back. And as you mentioned, to feed the 401k or the 401 chaos that doesn't that when people get, as you know, Michael, that I'm not sure if I call you Mike or Michael. I see it's Mike on here. I'll call you Mike.
Mike's good.
They that nobody when they got to 59 and a half, they never raise their hands in the air and go, I'm rich, if I've done it, right? So there's those people that, they got the security of the just over broke employment. And how do you distinguish? But if they leave, they feel irresponsible. They feel guilty because they left a security of the job, but they're not living their life. So they're stuck in between security and a set of golden handcuffs on them. I mean, I understand you and your wife got thrown off a cliff and you went for it, but I see, there's some like, well, would I still be here? But, what do you tell that person? Like, if it was me and I said, Mike, yes, I'm working corporate job, I make a lot of money, but I have traded my time over this and I've missed every ball game I've ever could have saw with my kids or birthdays, so on and so forth. Or I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, my gut already starts wrenching. I don't care about the money. What do you say to that person? What do you say to that person right now? What do you say?
First of all, it's very normal. And I don't know what the percentage is of the workforce, but it's a large percentage of the workforce that goes down that for many people.
Just keep going. Oh, yeah, that's okay. We got a little interrupt, but we're still going. We in this live shows we keep rolling. Anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, it's normal that there's nothing wrong with some people love the W-2, they love
Hmm.
the office environment, all the stuff. But the whole single income that you've talked about several times really does yourself a disservice. It's so easy to start up a side income these days. You have skills, you have knowledge, you have interests. You can do a lot of things. And so I think people owe it to themselves, do a little something. It doesn't, I mean, most of these things land the way we do it. It doesn't take but a few hours a week. Like even in our, we work with a lot of clients. It doesn't take a whole lot of time to ramp up, learn, do all the things. Even now, it's just, especially if you're just wanting to do it on the side, it's just a few deals. And so I would say, you owe it to yourself to explore something on the side. There's nothing wrong with it. And then you get a taste for it and you think, this is amazing. And I talked about it before the show, but one of the things that I lean into these days is what I call return on time.
Hmm.
And if you think about trading 8 or 10 or even 12 hours 5 to 6 days a week in a job for that salary, if you do the math, your return on time is really pretty low at the hourly rate. I mean, in many cases, it gets below minimum wage if you're not careful with your time. Now, as a business owner, I can track how many, I mean, I work a few hours a week and I can close $100,000 worth of real estate deals. I can take off when I want to. My wife can work. We can work together wherever we want to. I mentioned she's from Europe. And so we go 5 or 6 weeks a year and visit her family. And we're able to just stay and have a beautiful visit, not have to ask for paid time off or worry about, is my job going to be there when I get back? We can manage things remotely. And so I think we get caught up in the income side of the equation so much that we
Yes.
miss the time aspect of things. Like I mentioned, I was traveling for business half of a month. In the early days, I loved it. I got to go see Colombia, Brazil,
Yeah.
China, Europe, but then the novelty wears off, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, another trip, another airport, another, great. I have executive platinum status level, but I'm still sitting in an airport, and so
Another
it's the
conference room. You
time.
don't even know you're in Columbia. All conference rooms
Yeah,
look the same,
totally. There,
right?
I went to many different countries where I just went from the airport to the office to a hotel and back, and things. And so, yeah, the time aspect of things is what really hooks people once they try something on the side and you see that you can do something. Conversely, you can also create another job, and so you have to be careful about exactly what you're doing and how you set things up.
Yes.
But there are many more opportunities to maximize, to get rid of your income ceiling as well as to open up your time and flexibility to enjoy the life that you want. And one other thing, just and I'll kind of put a pin in it here, but like the exercises that we went through, I really like to encourage people to stop and think about that future and create the future that you want and then start stepping towards that, because in most cases it's not working for someone else, their agenda, their income metering out. Maybe you're going to retire someday, maybe not. Even still, supplement your income and get there faster. Who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years, right? I mean, all
Right.
the social nets and everything like that, even the 401k withdrawal rules and everything is open to be changed by the time you get there.
Right. So I don't want to romanticize entrepreneurship because there is a different
Oh my
mindset
gosh.
mind shift that happens from when you are in an environment of corporate welfare where everything is taught to you and there is no like you have a master's degree, an MBA that teaches you a certain way of corporate way of living, corporate way of train. You were trained corporately to work in that environment. Entrepreneur, small business isn't necessarily that way. It's a different mindset because the budget's small. You may have nothing. But what was harder? Was it learning to become an entrepreneur and detrain yourself? You think? I mean, you have your wife's influence who came from Romania, given a more stricter rules or control. And now you got freedom in America. I've talked to many immigrants. I have in my book, I talk about these guys from Brazil. They basically burn the boat and they see opportunity everywhere.
Yeah.
And when I say, I'm assuming you were born here, me too. You don't see that. And you get stuck in this rat maze, right? You don't see the opportunity around you because you've lived it. I know I'm going on a tangent here, but I'm trying to set the stage like, okay, this whole life you're okay, go to school, go to college, get a degree, get a 401k, and now you're not there anymore. Now you're X amount of years old. Now you got to detrain yourself to think like an entrepreneur because you got to go out and hustle. Nobody's giving you nothing. There's no inbox, outbox. So I'm trying to I'm trying to generate your thoughts on that. Like now you have to detrain yourself because it doesn't work that way. So that's
Yeah,
my
it
question.
was it was the hardest aspect of that transition. And so my background is operations and supply chain. And so I essentially ran profit and loss centers. I managed people. I've managed in boom times and in hard times. And so I came into entrepreneurship at least with that strong foundation of how to run a business, right? Metrics, strategy, tactics, discipline of doing things. That came easy for me. That was cultivated in my W-2 life for decades. And that was really that has helped us, quite honestly, build a solid, robust, repeatable business. But there is a huge mindset shift from someone setting an agenda for you and maybe not 100% giving you tasks and actions and the roadmap, but at least at some level giving it some level of monitoring your performance. Are you hitting the metrics and all that kind of stuff into total freedom and flexibility? I mean, if you think about as a teenager and you go off to college or you move out of the house for the first time and all of a sudden you have this unbridled freedom, things go off the rails typically for a little while until they come back on. So there is that risk. But that was, for me, the mindset issue. When we got into land, we found a program and a coach that could help us grow faster and avoid mistakes. Our coach was a master at the process. He knew how to teach us all of that stuff. We struggled with the mindset, and that's where fortunately we were able to lean on each other and kind of help each other through this. And this is where we try to help people today is a lot with that side of the equation as well, because a lot of people don't come into things with this business owner experience or mindset, and that they have to be the one to hold themselves accountable, to hit deliverables, meet commitments, and those kind of things. And so it was our biggest struggle in that first 6 to 12 months of diving into a business.
Nice. So building wealth usually begins with, as we talked about briefly, of managing risk or changing a relationship with risk. So you're managing it, but you got to change a relationship with that. Tell me the difference between Mike Deaton, the entrepreneur, and Mike Deaton, the corporate employee. One has budget, the other has company budget, and you're looking at risk, and you just go, what are you looking at as an employee? I mean, briefly, so we can move on, because I'm curious about the land, but I just got to know, like, How did you look at risk then? Now you're looking at risk now, you know? Like, "Hey, I lost
Yeah.
$50,000." You go to your boss, I don't know what you did. I don't know what specific you did, but, "Hey, boss, I lost $100,000 today." "Well, we're back tomorrow." I mean, where today, if you lost 100,000, you'd be like, what happened?"
Yeah, it's
Right?
painful.
Yeah.
I guess you could think about it in a couple different ways, but the way it actually happened was I was probably a lot more risk tolerant as an employee because it wasn't my own money, even though I was a steward of it. It just didn't hit like it does as an entrepreneur. And so, as an entrepreneur, I need a certain amount of liquidity in the bank. I don't want to over leverage myself in growing our business. And so, I am likely a lot more restrained than I could be. And I'm sure it holds us back from certain growth. Like we might be on a different trajectory than we have been able to grow our business over the last 10 years, but we're super happy with our life and where we are. And so yeah, that risk reward line is a little bit lower as a business owner and being responsible for, us, our family, and our goals. And so I'm probably a little tighter on the personal and the business risk than when I had a salary coming in, and you think, oh, I can blow this on a new vehicle or whatever, and there's more money behind it coming in, guaranteed, or which you would think guaranteed, but not really.
Right. So before we move on to vacant land, I wanna you touched on something, that made me think about risk, and so I wanna get your opinion. So, the concept of starting a business is risky, but risk is really a matter of perception. It's all how you view it. If I can go back to me, I was a police officer. And over time, you can think of all the different things, risk of going into a house or a fire. It all depends on how you're trained and how you view it, and it's your perception on things. How does that, isn't it true that it's not really, it's really how you understand the risk to call it a risk versus it's just a process. Hopefully you understand what I'm trying to get at, because some people will, a snake, I hate snakes. A snake handler will go, yeah, you should just kind of pay attention to it. And then me, I'd be like, I wouldn't even, don't even touch them. I don't, hopefully I'm trying to bridge the gap here, you know.
Yeah, I think very well. And so, like on your police analogy, it's really about a few factors. One, understanding the situation, and then two, knowing how to mitigate a certain situation, right? So you guys were trained, you knew what to look for, you exercised in drills and being able to sharpen your skills, and then you had responses mapped out on how to mitigate. It's very very similar in the business world.
Hmm.
The early days, I mean, we bought properties that were $1,000 or $2,000, and we could make $1,000 or $2,000. And after we did that half a dozen times or a dozen times, we thought, okay, we can make a lot more money if we doing the same amount of work if we just lever up. And we've continued to do that, and that just came through confidence and repetition. And yeah, now things that seemed risky then, not so risky now. We work with dozens of clients regularly, and everyone comes in with the same skepticism or
Hmm.
uncertainty. And until that, and that I always say, your first deal's for learning, not earning. And so it's really just about understand the process, get in, make yourself a proof point and go, okay, wow, you said it was going to work like this. It worked like that. And now we can do it. And so it really is just about understanding that. I mean, it's the same as a few years ago, I took up mountain biking, and everything was risky. And, now it flows a little more freely. Just, I
Right.
think many things are like that. And it is a total perception, but paired a little bit with skills and a little bit of situational awareness and how to control things, you build that confidence and that muscle. And you're like, okay, now I can jump from a higher platform or things like
Yep.
that.
So let's get in the business portion. Vacant land. Okay. All right, Mike. I'm a flipper, rehabber, apartments, people that can live. I've invested into buildings where we are, making into office buildings and stuff, right? Been involved in deals. Vacant land. Who would ever buy vacant land? I mean, why would you think that? I'm trying to tee you up so you can knock me out of the park, but why would you ever buy vacant? I mean, I know it's worth something, but it's not worth anything. The tax code supports improved property. The tax codes support when you make something, mortgages support that. And here you are selling me and trying to, yeah, you know what I mean when I say this. You're trying to tell me how to, that vacant land is the way to go. You got a long road ahead of you to try to tell me how to do that. So, and I mean this all tongue in cheek, and I'm trying to put a
I
little
hear you.
humor into this,
Yeah.
but why vacant land? I mean, I thought about, when I read your bio, I thought about it. I'm like, vacant land. I'm told my vacant land. What does he know that I don't know? That's what I really said, to be honest. Like, what does he know that I don't know? What am I missing out on? So anyway, go ahead. So
Well, it's flipping. It's flipping a house without any of the in between steps. And so our business model is at its simplest, we buy land below market value and we resell it. And we do it such that we double or triple our money on our deals because we're buying at 50 to 35% of the market value. And it is a repeatable formula that we have just done over the last 10 years, hundreds of deals in dozens of markets. And the genesis story is really a podcast like this. Before my layoff, I got into different passive income and side hustle type idea seeking. So I was listening to podcasts, just exploring what other people are doing. And I heard on two different episodes and two different shows people that were doing land flipping, and they talked about doubling and tripling their money in a short amount of time. Like I'm talking weeks, maybe a couple months, just pure quick flipping. And it sounded super appealing. And I reached out and bought a toolkit that somebody had to offer. And it came back then, it came in the mail and it was like a binder with paper and some
mm,
DVDs. And I actually had a DVD player in my computer in those days. And, but it sat on my desk because I was working full time. And it just,
yeah.
I didn't do it. Right. I bought this kit and I think I looked at the first one. I was like, okay, it seems kind of interesting, but then I'm on to other things. Only when that moment came and we started thinking about what could we do, did we go, hey, we should look at this and see if it might be something that we could really foresee doing. And so we went through the material. We went to a weekend event and met other people that were doing it and saw that it was working for other people. We got our proof points and we just kind of rolled from there and we did it in a risk tolerant manner. We just said, let's give ourselves 12 months to see if this will work. We put some seed capital into a business account and we said, okay, we'll do this for 12 months in good faith and we'll assess at the end of that period if this is working or not. Our fallback was always we could just get a job if it didn't work. And so, the genesis was listening to podcasts like this, but taking action, right? I bought the toolkit. I stood on it for a little while, but
Yep. Keep going.
uh,
I can hear you.
okay, good. Yeah, my screen went blank, but yeah. So we paused and everything, but eventually we just kept taking steps forward and got through to the other side, and we've just grown it ever since. But the reason we stuck with it, and that we continue to stick with it today, it's 90 or 95% of what we do. We still invest in. We've invested in multifamily deals, which is where we lost money.
Yeah.
We do some single family. We do all these things for tax efficiency. As you mentioned, land does not give any tax benefits. And so it's capital gains.
Hmm.
And in I think our third year of business, we made a lot of money and that tax bill came and my eyes went, what? And so then I started exploring other options to not only earn money, but then get the tax benefits. And so, we're in the world of real estate. We're real estate professional status. We can take full depreciation on assets that we invest in or that we purchase. And so it's a great pairing. But land is so simple. Like, I mean, like I said, we'll send out a campaign and it's usually letters. We send out
Hmm.
letters to property owners and we make them a lowball offer. And 1 to 3% of people will accept the offer. And there's different motivators: divorce, death. They bought something that they didn't want, that they thought they were going to use, that they're not, tired of paying property taxes. There's a
Hmm.
few systematic reasons, but people will reach out. They don't want to deal with realtors. They just want cash in their hand today. They'll accept the offer. And so we buy at a deep discount and we turn around and sell it. And even on the sales side, we leverage realtors and title companies. And so a lot of times we don't even have to mess with anything. We don't have like our next door neighbor, she runs a short-term rental out of her house and just comes up 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, the story she tells about things that get ruined, repairs she has to make,
Yep.
late night calls from the property manager. We have to deal with noisy neighbors or whatever. It's just, it's all the hassle. We flipped homes. It's the same thing. You deal with contractors, you deal with lenders, you have bridge lenders, you have different stuff. You have to sell it, market all the stuff. It's just there's a lot of anxiety that comes along with all of that. With all of that, we've done over 700 land deals in our 10
Hmm.
years, and we've never lost money
I'm
on a
sorry.
land
How many
deal.
years?
10.
That's a that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, and so they're not hard to do. They're it's just a question of scale, and you send out offers, you acquire properties, and you resell them. But we buy at such a deep discount that it masks even if you make a mistake. We have made some due diligence mistakes and other things. We buy a lot of properties sight unseen. We buy all properties sight unseen, quite honestly. But
That's not my risk, Mike. That's not my risk, by the way. I do not go to tax auctions. See, that's where you and I will differ. I can't go and buy something sight unseen, like go to tax auction and they go, "Here's your
yeah,
address," and I'm buying. Nope. Mm-mm.
exactly, because you don't know what you're going to get with land. I know what I'm going to get. And it's probably not fair to say sight unseen. I don't put my boots on the ground. There are online tools. I can use satellite mapping. The counties have their own imaging services. If I need, I have realtor connections in certain markets. They'll go, but there's really nothing to look at. Like the things you need to check are easements, tax liabilities, HOA liabilities, little things like that that are all online checkable. That's one of the things that we love about land as well is we just don't have to go and look at things. In our early days, we used to go take photos of properties that we would buy and videos. I have a drone. We would do some,
Hmm.
marketing materials, but even these days we don't mess with any of that. It's just a deal might take a couple of hours of our time end to end by the time we're done with it and we move on. And so it's hard. Like we look at our realtor will feed us fixer uppers and fix and flip opportunities. We'll do the math on a napkin or something and we'll be like, we'll just flip a land deal and I don't have to mess with a team of contractors or a nasty surprise when I open up this wall or all the stuff. And so
See, I think everybody takes a special thing. I enjoy that. I also like doing
I do too
contract.
to some
I
degree. I
mean,
mean, I grew up, my dad was a general contractor. I grew up working with his subs.
yeah.
And so I love that kind of stuff too, if I have the time to do it and, install a floor or do certain things. I just don't often invest
I'm
my
not trying
time
to
that
degrade.
way.
I would.
Yeah.
That's how I want
Yeah.
to spend my time because I like that. That's my. I enjoy it. I just
Yeah.
enjoy it.
I
Like,
do that here on the house. Like, I built a deck, I do some
yeah.
other things, but
So you touched on like that and this is for some of our listeners because I talk about this too, either person or people will get a PhD in REI real estate investing seminars. They'll buy all the things, they'll never read it, they'll never read the books, they'll never. 'Cause I mentioned it earlier about you can't read a video, you can't watch a video, read a book, and say you're an investor. But there's a lot of REI associations where people pay the membership. Now they say they're an investor and they haven't bought a single chunk of property. They've never even so much even called the contractor and they just look at properties. That's a PhD. Now the reality is getting boots on the ground. And I want to mention that specifically because you fell into that trap. And I should say trap. You did that and then something pushed you off the cliff to go back and revisit that. Now here you are. So that happens to a lot of people, but you should not allow that to happen to you. You buy it and with the purpose of executing. I always bring this up. I like to. So, but go back to when you look at it at a vacant land, I have sold vacant land as a realtor, crappy ones. I always get the bad ones that you can't even build on. They're just pieces of dirt. I've walked them out there and all of a sudden I fell in a swamp. I mean, my foot went right up to my thigh. You can't build on it. It's a watershed, da da da. It would take no. How do you know vacant land is good? And you said you don't get out there and look at it. I know there's maps. You can see where the water is, but sometimes you got to get out there and look and go, man, this is terrible, but anyway, how do you know a vacant land is good? Give us your, like,
Yeah.
say,
So,
good things.
okay, it's a good question. And so there are different categories of vacant land, right? There's rural acreage. We're talking 50, 100 plus acres. And you think hunting, ranching, rugged, things like that, or even farmable type lands, but they all have a different profile. And then there's your subdivision has infill lots, vacant land, buildable, maybe, and everything in between. And so, first of all, you have to kind of know your category and then your
Mhm.
market. And so if you're looking at land in Florida, there's a ton of retirement subdivisions platted out. They trade it's highest volume in the nation in terms of like a bunch of available vacant land. Well, there are things, yes, you need to know different flood zones. Are you in a 100-year flood zone? Are you in a more prone one? Different things like that. Those are very important to be aware of. You can get that largely online at the county. You can have it verified by call a local realtor. They typically know neighborhoods, they know what to look for, they'll counsel you on. There are some wildlife laws, like if there's a certain bird in a nest on a tree,
Mhm.
you can't disturb it or things like that. And so you kind of got to know what the purpose is and then understand what the conditions are that make something good or not, or at least influence the resale value. And those are all discoverable. A lot of we almost always tap into local knowledge. Realtors are amazing resources. They understand the nuances of a subdivision, paved roads, dirt roads, electricity here, not over here, sewage lines are built out to this level or not. And at the individual parcel level, that can be difficult sometimes if you don't go, if it's important. You mentioned swampland. There are people that want swampland. They want to ride their ATVs or a dirt bike or what. I mean, the one regret my wife and I talk about is in our early days, we were so selective on the properties that we, people would send back accepted offers and we would pass on it because we'd like look at it on Google Earth or somewhere and we go, oh, well, it's got a little bit of a slope to it, or maybe there's it looks like there's a crack going or whatever. And I mean, we have sold everything that we've bought, and there's a buyer out there for almost anything, especially if you buy it at the right price. And that's just kind of our business model. So
So you guys are coaches. Both of you are coaches, right?
we have coaching business. Yeah, we teach people to
Yep.
trade land like we do.
So a person comes up to you and says, "I have no money, Mike, but I want to get involved in this." What do you say to them first? And I'll go up the level ladder here, but I don't have any money.
It's
But I want to
doable.
get in
You
this, and
don't
I hate
need
my job.
Yeah, it's Tony Robbins says it's never due to a lack of resources, but to lack of resourcefulness. And real estate is the perfect industry for resourcefulness. There are ways to do it. I wrote a book on flipping dirt with little to no money, and it goes through half a dozen different business models that you can use and leverage your sweat equity. You can just like in the home business, it's really very synonymous. You can connect buyers and sellers and take, a commission or an arbitrage or an assignment fee or whatever you want to
Okay,
call it.
be a
You can,
wholesaler, right?
yeah, you can
Yeah.
partner with people. If you don't have the money, somebody has the money in land. We're doubling our money, and so there's a lot of margin to play with in a capital partner. There's a lot of different ways to go about it,
Okay.
but don't let money hold you back.
I like hearing that, and that's what I was hoping to hear because I assume that's where anything an entrepreneur, if it's a good deal, there's good somebody will show up. Would you agree?
Capital is out
Or
there. People are
something's out
looking
there.
for, yeah, people are looking for ways to deploy capital.
So let's keep with the coaching here for just a second. Unless you want to I mean, I kind of understand how you're acquiring land, and you just got a different. You basically take almost any vacant land, unless it's like it was on a 3 Mile Island where there was a nuclear fallout there, and you couldn't, and that dirt isn't worth anything. But so you have a person that's coaching. There's going to be a listener out there who's like, but when should I plan out to leave my job? Okay, Mike, I'm coming here. I'm going to wholesale these properties. I'm going to hustle, but I want to put a goal out there. I'm writing on my board. I got a board right over here, Mike, right here, and yeah, I write my goals on here. I race them. I start up every week. I write my goals to what I want to complete. And when are you going to say? I can leave my job? When is Mike can say, if I came to you and go, okay, I'm coaching today, I'm leaving my corporate job because I hate it, but I'm doing this. What are you gonna tell me? 2055, you know,
No,
30 years
we
from
put a
now?
plan together. When people come into our program, the first thing we do is we sit down and we define the strategy. And a big part of that is, what is your goal? Is your goal to leave your job? Is your goal just some supplemental income? If it's to leave your job, then we map that out. What are your resources today? Do you have a safety net? Do you have income that's going to be coming in or not? What's your risk tolerance? In land, we haven't touched on this, but when we sell a property, we do it broadly two ways. One, we just straight up flip it, cash deal, we're in, we're out, we get the money in our bank, and we're done. Another way, and my preferred way, is we owner finance to people a sale. And so we just sold a property last week, 40 acres in Arizona. We bought it for $12,000. We sold it to a guy. He put $20,000 in a down payment. And so we're out of the deal. Like we're whole plus a profit. And he's going to pay $525 for 4 years. And so, the total cost is like 49,000, I think, all in. But we know for 4 years, we've got $500 a month coming in. We've stacked those over months so that now we have a passive ish income coming in, and that gives me the confidence that I can do deals. I don't have to eat what I kill, so to speak, in the way, which is some people are risk tolerant like that. I'm not. I don't like that anxiety of my bank account's getting lean. I gotta, get out there and hustle and sell something. Some people love it,
So you become
but
a bank. Just,
that would
just
be my preferred approach. Would be to stack somebody up like that so that their monthly income starts to equal whatever they need to live plus whatever they want. It's obviously finite because we have a 4-year contract with somebody and they will pay it off and we'll give them the deed to the land. But you can replace that over the 4-year period or 5-year period or whatever.
so
Sorry, you were saying something?
yeah, just so we get too far away from that point that people didn't understand what you just said. And I'm going to
Mhm,
clarify this. You basically became the bank
totally.
for that. You are the court, you've replaced the corporate bank for that piece of property. They are now paying you back. You actually are on the deed as a first lien holder of that property. So if anything happens to it, you can get them back through foreclosure. You have first interest, but their name is on that deed to that property. So you are the bank. You've become a bank. Am I right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
probably 80% of our sales. The only thing that I would switch was we sell primarily on what's called a contract for deed. And so we are the owner fully until somebody pays it off. And if they stop paying, all we do is we send them a contract termination notice and we don't have to go through a foreclosure process. And so
Okay.
it's
Got
a
it.
real clean in and out. And actually, I just was reflecting on this a couple of weeks ago. The first deal we ever went full cycle on was, I think it's about 10 acres here in Colorado. And that was 10 years ago. And so it was the first deal we sold. We sold it on owner financing terms. We still own that property today, and we've resold it, I think, 3 or 4 times. And the last person that bought it, like we'd already made a profit on the deal. And so we have like a really, low monthly payment, long term, somebody's buying it. But we've been through that process a few times for whatever reason on that property. It doesn't happen a lot. It's probably 2-3% of our total sales, but it happens. We typically try to work with people as a bank or a lender
Mhm.
if they work with us. But in some cases, people just disappear and they're non-responsive and stuff. But yeah, we try to avoid any type of foreclosure process just because it's messy, it's costly in many cases, and so this is a lot cleaner way to manage the process. Not all states are there's some nuances from state to state on how you can structure contracts like that. You have to be aware of it, but in the states that we're in, that's how we operate.
Okay. So what changed between becoming, making a few profitable deals, becoming like a seven-figure business? What was that change? And kind of as you're coaching people along, you're like, you're going to notice these changes come along. First, you're going to have this because I mean, everybody seems to go through things very similar. Some people stay in certain stages of entrepreneurship longer than others because they can't get past that, whatever it is that they're in. So, what changed in between a few profitable deals and to your seven-figure income business that you have now? What were the changes?
Yeah, and so as with anything, it's really just a question of scale. And land is a simpler process than a lot because many of the steps are somewhat formulaic. But it's acquisitions and sales as two elements of the business. And in the acquisition side, it's markets, understanding which market you want to be in, making the offers and generating the properties that you can use to get inventory, and then leveraging on the marketing and sales side. And my background in supply chain and operations really was all about there's a concept in the supply chain called the bullwhip effect, which is like, signals at one end generate supply at the other end, and over time those start to oscillate and they get bigger and bigger and things get really out of whack. And so it's really about bringing things up at both ends or throughout the supply chain, if you will, at a steady level, and identifying the bottlenecks. And really in land, the bottleneck is capital typically. And so it really, for us, our first, I don't know, 5 or 6, even maybe 7 years, we self-funded everything. Like we just had a flywheel and we grew fairly steadily. As money came back in, we would reapply it and buy more deals, buy bigger deals, and do
Right.
things. And then we started tapping in more to leverage and like I said, I have an aversion to debt, but it is an essential element of any business scaling to larger levels. I mean, you're not going to grow very far unless you start to tap into capital in other sources. And that was probably the unlock for us, was really applying those things. The business itself is not too labor intensive, but there are ways, like I said, we leverage title companies, realtors, the whole sales and marketing side of the business is that way. Realtors are great. They're commission based, right? You're not putting any money out until you sell something. And so properties they don't sit very long typically in the land business, but they can. And so, that's a cost avoidance or delay until things happen there. The acquisition side of the business, sending out offers. I mean, we're talking about 62 cents per bulk letter that go out. We send out 1,000, we might get 10 accepted offers, plus or minus. And so it's a very cost effective way of acquiring inventory. And then there's just the purchase of the asset. And that's where the capital heavy part can come in. It doesn't have to. I mean, there's ways to do it. It just takes a little more time and resource. But yeah, for us, it really, as we grew, capital became the bottleneck. And that was what we had to unlock. There are land specific lenders that love the land business because they understand it and they know the speed, the margins, and all that. And so they're easy resources to tap into. We have business line of credit at our bank. And so there's a lot of different ways to go about it. We didn't in the early days, but we've built up to that.
Right. So success is a matter of execution. I'm stick with your coaching of how you get people past that, execute the when they get to the different levels. Like maybe I don't know, where do you see the biggest fear in everybody you've coached, where they kind of get paralyzed? Because at first you're all new and you're just killing it. Because I remember I was doing like, oh my god, this is so easy. Then like anything else, you got a superb record. You got a superb record that you've won on every single one of your deals. Now you're trying to preserve that, something and nothing. You don't want to lose the game. So how do you get them past that when that fear comes in, or something? I don't know what it is, but there's a fear and it stops them. So
There
how do you
is. Yeah.
how do you get past that?
Well, as I mentioned, that's our big mission with coaching, is really helping with that soft side of the business, not the processes and the money and things like that. I would say, I mean, it happens in a couple of normal places. Market selection, people get mental paralysis, thinking I got to get into the best market. Almost all markets work. It's really just getting in one that fits largely. We have a process that we take people through. Processes and framework really help people get through obstacles and resistance. If there's a clear step-by-step method and they just know, if I just take this next step, and then I do this, it really helps alleviate that. But we also like to hold people accountable. We do coaching at a group level, and then we also have one-on-one clients.
Hmm.
But we personally coach everybody. And so I have a client that, oh, I got called out of town this week. I got to work. I'm going to get to this next week. And I was like, okay, I'm going to hold you accountable. You put it out there. You're going to do it by next week. And so let's make sure it gets done. It's really just keeping people moving one step at a time. We keep our business pretty small because of that. Like I don't have 1,000 clients that I have sub coaches working with, it becomes sanitized, or when you're in an environment like that, somebody doesn't really care about you too much. I care about all my clients. I want them to have success. I'm checking in. Hey, I haven't heard from you this week. What's going on? Are you moving things forward? And so it's really that level. But that client I was just talking about, he was apprehensive to sign up for coaching because he'd been through another program where he was allowed to kind of flounder and not follow through. And part of that's on him. Like he needs to take the action and to move forward. But
He
I'm
did
going to
hire
help
you
him be
for
a
a reason, though, right? He hired you because
100%.
he couldn't do it himself. And I mean to interrupt, but it reminds me of a time I was going to get involved in this coaching program. I've had coaches too. And I'm looking at this kid, 25 years old. At the time, I have three kids. I just retired from being a police officer. I've been in the military. I put myself through college. Those aren't like little, you know, weekend warrior stuff there. I was poor as heck in college because I had to put myself through. I'm not complaining. It built me who I am. Okay. And I'm listening to this kid, and he's like, well, we're going to show you how to do business. I went there for one person, and I'm getting this kid that's 25 years old that probably figured, well, I'm going to try this real estate thing. And next thing you know, they teach him how to do what they're saying. And I'm going to pay $25,000 to this kid who's going to say, did you get your phone calls in today?
Yeah,
Well, I didn't pay, by the way. And I sat there and went, you think I'm going to take a lesson from somebody 20? I'm not saying this isn't your system. You're hired by that person to teach that system. You don't know what I'm going through. I don't know how. You know what I mean? You should be
yeah,
given a
totally.
discount. So I'm glad to hear that you're like keeping that. That's something our listeners or anybody else like you are teaching this because you went through this. You have had kids or you still have kids, but gone through that process. That's an important thing to be bring up because I was through that and I was very livid about that.
This was like that. We signed up and it was almost a bait and switch. We were like, oh, we're gonna, we interviewed with someone, we signed up, and then it was like, well, this is gonna be your coach now. And we were like,
Yeah.
what? He goes, oh, well, he's better than me. And I don't know, it was kind of a yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's all too common in these larger
Yeah.
enterprises
Yes.
that are more educational programs than they are
You
a
gotta
real
be
estate or a
careful,
coaching
though. You
program.
have to be careful, and I didn't know that, and it's like going to some university, and you're gonna work under the guy who's, I don't know, I'm making this up, who's the great chemist, and you never see him at all. You
Yeah,
are, grad students and blah, 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 and everybody else but
yeah,
him, right? And you're
yeah.
like,
It's a
"Okay."
brand. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. So that brings me up to we're talking about I want to move into the loss because you have all the getting away from the fear, but you also got into some money. You lost money in real estate. Like many of us have. You don't have that perfect record and you got this loss. And I want to know how you dealt with that. Well, when you found out about your loss. So I'm trying to put you in that spot when you found out you had that loss. Like it just got to you $250,000. Nothing to sneeze at. That is not chump change, right? That's not. You sat there and I want to know the conversation briefly between you and your wife. And then what did you do after that? We already know because you're here, but so we already know the end story. But I want to know, was that as devastating as when you both got laid off and said you're no longer wanted here? At your jobs on the same day? Was that the kind of same conversation? Or did the conversation go, you know what? We've been here before. This is nothing. Get back to work. I don't know. I'm kind of curious how this is gonna go.
Yeah. Yeah. So our loss came from a multifamily syndication. We invested in and were the one of the lead partners in an apartment investment deal. in Texas. And we were general partners in the deal. And
Hmm.
if for people that may or may not know, right, we have a more active role and taking a little bit more equity than a limited partner who just kind of more passively invests. And this deal was getting into trouble, and it was cash. It wasn't cash flowing yet, and the operational reserves were running out. And the pitch was, in order to bridge to profitability, we needed to inject more capital. And so
Cash
we
call,
put in,
right?
sorry.
That's called a cash call. They'll call it a
Well,
cash
yeah,
call.
we didn't have a full capital call. It's like we didn't go down to the limited partners,
Okay.
but we injected some of the general partners'
Mhm.
money in,
Okay.
and we put in that additional money in addition to our upfront investment to the tune of $250,000 in this deal so far. And it didn't work. We had floating rate debt on the deal from the bank, and this was during the time when the rates just went crazy. The year 2021 or two, where the Fed did record aggressive rate hikes to stem the inflation and the impacts of COVID and different things like that. And the bank ended up selling the property. They didn't foreclose on this one, but they sold to another investor. They just sold the loan out, and we were out of the deal. And so it was, yeah, I mean, it was, you hit both sides of my mindset in all of this. It was devastating, but I moved on quickly and was like, that's fine. We'll make it up. It's part of the investing process. It's not 100% track record. We had other multifamily deals that we doubled our money on, and we had made some money. And so it was painful. My wife has had a harder time recovering. She's still grieving over the loss of money. She's kind of, getting more removed from the situation. However, it just so happened that this year, a lot of people don't realize this, but like when you're taking depreciation on assets, which everybody likes to tout the tax benefits, well, when a sale event happens, there's a thing called recapture, where your taxes recapture all of that depreciation that you have taken. And so that happens to be on last year's tax. And so we get a double whammy, like, oh, you not only did you incur this loss, but your income tax is going to be another reminder of this painful loss.
Right.
But yeah, I've recovered. I don't think about it too often, other than when something like this comes up. I mean, I'm a forward motion. Let's go. We just accelerate a little bit more and make it up. It's part of the process. But it was a tough conversation. It was, I mean, we spent, I don't know how long, weeks or months grieving. I mean, literally just that is not a small amount of money for us, especially. I mean, maybe somebody else, it's just table stakes or something, but
Yeah.
you know,
I don't think they're listening to anybody on YouTube. If they think that's small potatoes, I don't think they're listening to anything on YouTube where this is going to be published. I
probably
just don't
not. Yeah,
I just
not
don't
in the
think so.
audience. Yes.
And they ain't going to listen to me, and no disrespect, they ain't going to be listening to you.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. No, they're another league altogether.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely. But many
but
people
it
get
happens,
this.
and it is a
Yes.
risk, and it was a risk that I will say. And so we had a coach and a mentor when we were in a multifamily group, and there was all these people making investments, and I feel like we didn't get really good coaching in terms of the risks and the things. And I don't I, I'm not a I, I'm an accountability person. Like I take all of it. I made the decisions, I wired the money, I did the stuff. I
Hmm.
didn't take the extra step to make sure I understood all the risks and things. But I kind of operated under the assumption that we were going to be in the second, the bank was going to hold the first lien. We were going to be, as lenders, a second position. And I just didn't foresee this foreclosure type
Right.
of situation. And that was the most painful of all, was just being uninformed to a degree and making a costly mistake in that way.
So I want to, you have a bad decision. I'm putting this lightly. Let me frame this first. I'm not accusing you of bad decision, but look back. That probably was. If you
Sure.
could go
Yeah.
back, it's a bad decision.
Yeah.
Probably, I'm
Yeah. I
assuming
was
you had a bridge loan that was involved. The bridge loan that had been notorious with syndication. They fluctuated so much they take all the NOI money out, if not more, and you're out. Everybody's out. Rents are up high, and it did what you said it was supposed to do, but you didn't account for the bank to do a one over. So that decision, which of the control you don't have control on. So my question is you can make a good decision, which was I imagine a good decision getting into it, based on availability of what you have, and still lose money. This is a good decision with a bad outcome, right? So, you know, how can you beat yourself up over that? This is not something that you could control because we know we have to use debt, and debt is the way to go to leverage. If not, you will never ever get financially free. You only take baby steps. So there is that. So would you agree? There's a good decision there. It wasn't really a bad decision. I started out saying that, but it was a good decision based on the fact. And I bet your NOI was up, right? I bet your NOI
Yeah, it
was
wasn't
up.
bad. I mean, we were growing.
Hmm.
We just weren't able to cover the debt servicing on the mortgage because the rates were going faster than we could, or beyond the business case. Which hindsight's 2020 on all of these things. But just at that moment in time, rates were the lowest they had ever been, and they really didn't have much room to go down. And
Right.
to think about taking floating rate debt when the only direction it could go was up was the pivotal mistake in the business case altogether. And that's really the one that hurts. Is like, I would have hoped that hiring a coach and a mentor that had a little bit more experience under their belt would also see that. But there was a fervor, right? It was a classic bubble almost. There were deals just going and going and going, and
Well,
people
yes,
were
there
competing to
were.
win the deal. And so you're maybe not being as conservative as you should on different. It was just that moment in time, and we got caught up in it.
So, how did this failure change the way that you invest into real estate? I mean, are you running back to syndication now? Are you staying away from it? Or are you going, yeah, I can do syndication, but we're not going to do it with a bridge loan or something
Yeah,
like
we
that?
we we stay away from syndications, or at least we have. For the first few years, things were paralyzed anyway, and deals
Mhm.
just really weren't happening. But our mindset now is really more controllable assets. Like, I want to be fully ownership. I want to fully own my asset. Maybe a JV with a partner or other, but I don't like the syndication model, and I don't know that I was fully conceptualizing this, but it's very much like flipping, right? I mean, you get into something and it has a 5 or maybe a 7-year business case with an exit planned, and then you're on to the next thing. I want cash flowing assets. I want something that I can buy and hold that's going to generate, whether that's a small multifamily or some type of light industrial or storage or whatever. I want to be in the lead position. That's what we love about land. We're not in debt to anybody. We can cash out anytime we want, and we don't have other investors to worry about, which unfortunately we had some investors in this deal that we brought in that also, lost money, and just so much anxiety comes with all that, and I don't want that in my life. And so we're more, what can we buy that we own that still serves our purpose? I don't need to be a fractional owner of a 200 unit multifamily. I'd rather
Right,
be a full owner of a 20 unit or something.
right. I think syndication is worse than the flipping. I think syndication is worse than a 401k. Because if you are, especially for a passive, come correction, the role of a passive investor in a syndication is worse than flipping and worse than being getting involved in a 401k. Because for the listeners who don't understand what he was saying there, is basically you have the passive investors. He wasn't a passive; he was the general partner. He was the one that was basically the lead. I got that correct when you said general
Right?
partner.
Decision making
Yep.
authority and stuff. Yeah.
And the limited part where the people just dump in money and expect a return based on your evaluation, based on your ability to make that property grow. But nobody at that time could determine that the bank was gonna do what they do, or the Fed was gonna do what they did. But unlike passive investing, they put their money in, expect to get an X amount of return. If it doesn't come back, your money's tied up. You can't, unlike a 401k where you could just go from Merrill Lynch to Fidelity to anybody else. You can't do that, and you can't vote yourself out and trying to sell may not be part of the rules that you have signed saying you can sell out. You're stuck there. You this is like a marriage of 5 to 7 if they decide to do 5 to 7, and that's a few people deciding that. You can try to vote them out, but good luck in trying to get a hold of everybody to do that. There are so many things that are involved in that, and I don't think they'll talk about freedom, but I don't think that there's freedom involved in that. And I don't really enjoy syndication as the way it's wrapped up right now. I don't really like that. But
Yeah, I don't either. I'm not a fan of the business model after having been in it,
I don't
and
either.
we were in half a dozen different deals, and yeah, it is very restrictive, and you are beholden. Even us as general partners, we really didn't have decision making capabilities. We had a lead sponsor above us that had all the decision making control,
Mhm.
and we were actually left out of a lot of the
Wow.
conversations with the bank, with other potential purchasers, and but then when it comes time for money, somebody looks at you and says, hey, we need to put some money in the deal. So
So I want
it
to
is a
move
tough.
to the keep on the freedom rule of keeping financially free, but you guys talk about return on time. And I
Mhm.
want to close with it because this is the most important thing. Again, I'm going to reiterate. Mike calls me when I decided a few hours before that I'm going to go fishing, and so I do go. And he's like, because I have that time now. I'm not Mr. Rich. I don't make millions of dollars, but my bills are paid, and I am living my life. I want to go, I go. And I still am doing in deals, stuff like that. But everybody talks about cap rates, investment, but you're talking about return on time. And that is your biggest thing, which I think is so important because we don't get that back. It's so cliche, but until you live it, you don't get it. So, what I really want to say is give me an example of an investment that might have an excellent ROI, but a terrible return on time, and then flip it the other way around. So I want you to tell me, let's give me an example of something that's terrible return. Is you don't get any return on time. You invested into it, and then the other way is how do I maximize my time but still get a good return?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say a W-2 job is maybe one of the worst, like if you're an hourly employee or even a salary employee. But I'll use the example we were just talking about. I was a general partner in this deal. I was asset managing the deal, and so it was an apartment complex. It had a property manager. We had a few property managers along the way, but I was spending easily 30 or 40 hours a week on the phone with property manager, having calls, talking to their leadership, working through the metrics, talking to my investors, talking with the other general partners. I mean, I was and the stress that I carried outside of each of those active meetings. My time was eaten by this deal, and I got actually lost money on the deal. But assuming I had made money on the deal, I don't want to do that anymore. It's just same as you. I live a life today where if the sun is shining and I want to go out for a trail run, I go out for a trail run.
Hmm.
I control my calendar. If I want to take a lead call, I take it. If I want, I limit my coaching for exactly that reason. I want to personally coach people, but I don't want 40 hours of it a week. And so I take on as many clients as I want. And I put the brakes on when I'm, starting to get to a certain level, just because I want that level of freedom in my life as well. And so that's just where land gives me so much of that because there are no timelines. Like somebody wants to sell their property, it's not like I have to call them right away. I can work in the evening tonight if I want to. I
Right.
can get up early and do something. I can work midday, just all of that. I sit on the back porch and work a lot of times, and it's just a totally different lifestyle and life than I had when I was a W-2 employee, which I enjoyed a little bit of that because we were some remote working and doing things like that. But, boss wanted to have a meeting, I had a meeting. If I needed to travel, I had to travel, those kind of things. And so that for me is it's honestly more important than the income. I would rather take less of an income and have more of the freedom than work. I can have both, thankfully, but that would be my preference if it were that way.
So I want you to think in this next segment here. I want you to talk to the guy in the cubicle, not to me, because I know you don't know, I know, but I have I've built a business on real estate, so we can go back and forth on many things. But there's a guy sitting in the cubicle right now that, or a girl, or woman, whatever, or a young kid that wants to start on, doesn't want to go in the cubicle. Why don't you put in your mindset that you're talking to him or her, and think of if Mike lost everything right this very second. And this today is actually a Wednesday that we're recording this. You lose everything today on a Wednesday or Thursday. And I think you mentioned, ironically, that you lost your job on a Wednesday or
Yeah,
Thursday.
yeah.
Okay, you lost everything. Coaching's gone for some reason. Just I don't know why. Let's just say it's gone. But of course, you retained everything else. What do you do Monday? What do you do Monday? Put put him. You're talking to the guy in the cubicle, not me, and not to yourself. You're going to say, "This is what I would do. This is what, if I lost everything. This is what I would do. What would you do?"
Yeah, you got to take stock of your resources. And I talk about it in my second book, but we have different levels of capital, right? You think about financial capital, which hopefully your financial house is in order and you're able to bridge turbulence like that. If you're not, you still have resources. You have a network you can tap into, friends and family, professional network. That's all the more reason to foster that while you can to grow that. And then you have skills. You may not, if you may not think you do, but you do have a lot of different skills and resources. That's step one for me, is just taking stock of whatever it is. What can you leverage? What can you use to your benefit? And then there's a lot of different ways to go about making money these days. You can be a connector. You can do video
Mhm.
editing. You can do whatever. I mean, it's wide open these days, and just getting more and more that way. And so don't limit yourself, but ideally you get yourself in order before that happens so that you can then easily transition or pivot. But that's all the more reason, as we opened the conversation, to not be stuck on a single source of income, or at least one that you don't control.
So I'm going to kind of close with this last one for your future. You mentioned this way back early in that when you coach people, you say, "Hey, what do you where should you be going with this? Like, where's your goal at? That's your the reason why you're doing it." Obviously, you give them a why for them to get up and change this. So after the layoffs, all of the successful deals, the $250,000 loss, I'm just finding out now that you wrote 2 books or more. You've done a lot, and you're coaching. You're coaching people. You're getting your return on time. Everything you've learned on the way. What right now is Mike optimizing in your life for today? What is that thing that you're focusing on this day as record? What's your thing that you're trying to optimize? What is that one thing?
Yeah, for me, my driver is really giving value in the world. And so if you think about all the domains, I have 2 daughters, they're adults. I want to enrich my relationships with them. My relationship with Lygia is, most important and revered right now. And so we foster that. And I want to give and enrich her life as much as I can. My parents are both still living, thankfully. And so I have a rich network. We like experiences, but I'm really about giving back. I love giving back through coaching in the land business. I'd love to expand it into different domains of life. But I'm a firm believer that we leave things better than we came in. That should be the mission, and that's really something I'm trying to live here as I kind of enter this next chapter of life. I don't know how long I'm going to live, but I'm not young by any means, and so I'm long in the tooth, as they say, and I start to think forward in that way. I don't really like the word legacy too much, but I definitely like to make an impact in people's lives, and a positive impact in people's lives.
So I appreciate you being on today's episode. I learned something here, but of course, me, it's always about the mindset. And I mean, there's a couple lessons here. We're talking about security, which I find very interesting. It can be taken away, or you can generate the security yourself. And you just proved that you could do that, right? It got taken away, and then you turned right around and you created multiple sense of security for you, right? Beyond that. Second is that building wealth isn't simply about the dollar. It's really about your time chasing the dollar. We know, you and I both know, well, we didn't talk about it, but money's not real. We know this. It's not real.
It's
It's
concept.
fake.
Yeah.
But experience about something. And I think that we kind of touched on that some today. And what is, your return on time that you're putting into your life? You mentioned many times today in summary that, I mean, you had time to write a book, to express 2 books I was unaware of. Guess I should have asked. I'm gonna have to start asking people, did you write a book? And what are the names of the books? And where can we get them before I summarize this up and ask you one last question? What are the names of the books? Because I'm an avid
Yeah,
reader.
so
I read a lot.
they're both Flipping Dirt. They're here behind me on the shelf, but Flipping Dirt is really the first book is more about the business model, my
Mhm.
story, our story, and a little bit of lessons. And then I wrote the companion, which is Flipping Dirt with Little to No Money, because I talk to a lot of people who say, I don't have money to get started. I don't know this thing. And
See?
so I wrote a companion to help people out that maybe don't have money for coaching. But there's a whole environment there. People that buy that book, they can also come into our community and get some of the tools and templates and get a head start if you don't have the money right away. It shouldn't be limited to people that can pay for coaching. And so those are my two. You can get them on Amazon in the Amazon store in
Great.
digital or paperback.
So, how does somebody contact you? And give me a couple address you talk that'll pop up on the screen, and hopefully later you'll email me the so I can put them on there. I mean, obviously, you got to have. Do you have any kind of social media contact? You got an email? Do you got something you want to, anything you want to put out there? Tell me, and then email it to me so I can put it up there.
Yeah, so we have a website, flippingdirt.us. And if you go to flippingdirt.us/freedom, I made it a little bit of a podcast jumping off point where my contact information is there. You can set up a call if you want to have a call. I'm happy to talk about what land could look like in your
Hmm.
domain. There's some free resources that people can download. That's really a static site. And the best place to grab me is maybe on Instagram at M Deaton Jr. I'm trying to be more active there. It's a lot more interactive. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, Michael Deaton Jr., Michael B. Deaton Jr., I think. But yeah, I'll send you those links if you don't have them already, and then you can put those in the comments. But any of those three places are pretty accessible for
Okay,
me.
great. So, Michael or Mike, thank you for being on the Tail Light podcast. I really appreciate this. Has been. I never would have thought selling vacant land. I'm telling, but now I'm kind of like looking at this differently because I'm
Me
not
either.
kidding you. I'm buying your book, and you just I'm going to tell you like with a picture of me going, "Told you," because I'm a man of my word. But I always have to prove it because I'm evidence driven. And so I see I bought it, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. Got any last final words?
No, that's it. I mean, I think I usually try to leave people with just take action. Like it doesn't have to be massive action, it can be, but in all of these pursuits, really you just got to take action. It took that for me. Like I need a little spur, but it's just about taking steady action. If you're interested in something, don't overthink it. Get enough information and then just start taking action. I mean, that's the secret to all of this stuff, really, whether it's real estate or business or even a W-2 career. It's all about, you can learn only so much, but then you got to at some point apply it.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. Hopefully you
Thank
had a
you,
great
Steve. I
time.
really enjoyed
And
the conversation, and I appreciate you extending the seat for me to come on and talk about vacant land.
absolutely. All right. Thanks.
Take care.